Let's talk about the 12 deadliest pirates of all time, judged by how well they kept their crews in line, their skill in battle, the charismatic influence and reach of their reputation, and their historically verified lore. Let's raise the black flag. Anne Bonny. At number 12, we're starting with the red-haired terror of Nassau, Anne Bonny. She grew up around the year 1700 in Cork, Ireland. She was born out of wedlock, which was such a scandal at the time that her father dressed her as a boy, calling her his nephew. When the gossip grew too loud, her father moved the family to America to outrun the shame. In Charleston, South Carolina, Anne married a small-time sailor named James, who later dragged her to the Caribbean for work. And once she tasted the freedom of Nassau, she left him without hesitation. That's where she met Calico Jack Rackham, joined his crew, and slipped into trousers, sash, and pistols to blend in, a full loadout swap before every raid. She fought in every encounter with raw aggression. When Rackham was captured in 1720 and sentenced to hang, Anne visited him and delivered one final insult. "Had ye fought like a man, ye needn't be hanged like a dog." After Rackham was executed, the courts turned to the crew next, but Anne avoided the noose by pleading pregnancy, the classic pirate loophole. And then, Anne Bonny vanished from the record. Her playstyle? The rebel heart. Volatile DPS, low command, pure chaos value. Anne Bonny lands in Tier 3 because her ferocity was unforgettable, but her footprint was minimal. No fleets, no strategy, just high burst damage. Quick, before we reveal the next treasure trove of pirate legend, hit subscribe, or walk the plank, you scurvy button masher. Francois L'Olonnais. At number 11, we've got the Butcher of the Caribbean, Francois L'Olonnais. Born in France around 1630, he arrived in the Caribbean as an indentured servant and came out the other side with violence stitched into his soul. Once freed, he joined the buccaneers of Hispaniola, mastering ambush attacks, night raids, and sheer terror as his signature weapons. His brutality wasn't a rumor, it was his brand. Spanish soldiers called him the Demon. L'Olonnais raided towns along the Spanish Main with a cruelty designed to break morale. In one account, he cut open a prisoner's chest, ripped out the heart, and squeezed the blood in front of the remaining victims. Francois' leadership style was pure intimidation, but fear isn't sustainable. And eventually his luck ran out. Captured by the Kuna people of Panama, he was executed in a way even pirates whispered about. Dismembered alive, piece by piece. Some less trusted sources even say he was eaten. No grave, no monument, a brutal end. His playstyle? The Fear Engine. High burst damage, zero stability, permanent morale debuff to enemies. Francois L'Olonnais lands in Tier 3 because terror made him deadly, but fear without structure can't command fleets. William Kidd. At number 10, meet William Kidd, the would-be pirate killer who was betrayed, framed, and executed as one of them. Born around 1645 in Dundee, Scotland, Kidd worked his way up from ordinary sailor to respected captain, and was eventually hired by powerful English nobles as a government-approved privateer. His task? Pirate hunting. But his crew hated the job. They wanted plunder. And Kidd's strict discipline turned that frustration into open rebellion. For all his bad luck, though, Kidd wasn't exactly a lightweight. He captured real prizes, including the Quedagh Merchant, a ship loaded with treasure, and one he believed was a fully legal target. But the owners of the Quedagh Merchant had deep political protection, and that victory instantly became the mistake that destroyed him. Overnight, the crown branded him a pirate. His crew deserted him, his allies betrayed him, and Kidd found himself trapped in a global scandal he never intended to start. At his trial, the key documents proving his innocence went missing. Kidd was convicted on flimsy evidence and hanged at execution dock, the rope snapping on the first attempt. It didn't snap on the second. Modern historians argue Kidd was more victim than villain, a decent man destroyed by politics, mutiny, and miscalculation. His playstyle? The fallen privateer. Solid morals, weak authority, and disastrous crew cohesion. William Kidd lands in Tier 3 because he had skill, loyalty, and connections, but poor crew management, political betrayal, and one tragic critical failure turned him from hunter to hunted. Henry Every. At number 9, we're looking at the ghost of the Indian Ocean and speedrunner of the seas, Henry Every, the man who pulled off piracy's fastest, cleanest route to legendary loot. Born around 1659 in Devon, England, he spent years moving between merchant ships and naval service, building a quiet reputation as a sharp, dependable sailor. But a stalled privateering mission with months of unpaid wages turned that frustration into mutiny fuel, and that's where Henry Every stepped in. His takeover of the Charles II was surgical, almost entirely bloodless. He renamed her Fancy, stripped the weight, and optimized her for speed. Then he aimed straight for the richest waters on Earth, the Mughal convoy routes. Every wasn't interested in side quests. He went straight for the final boss, the Ganji Sawai, the Mughal Empire's treasure flagship returning from Mecca. Before the fighting started, Every barked one cold warning to his men.
"If ye won't fight, ye'll be food for the fishes."
The fight was brutal, but the reward was staggering. The single richest haul in pirate history, a legendary drop of gold, silver, jewels, and rare goods worth more than entire colonies. Overnight, he became the most wanted man alive. England, the Mughal Empire, and the East India Company all launched a coordinated hunt, the first of its kind. But Every slipped away, abandoned his ship, and vanished. Some say he escaped to Ireland. Some say he died broke. No one ever proved a thing. His playstyle? The Ghost Captain. High-speed strategy, elite timing, impossible to pin down. Henry Every lands in Tier 3 because his one legendary strike changed global politics. But no fleets, no longevity, and limited proof mean there's no way to confirm his high score. Samuel Bellamy. At number 8, meet the tragic golden boy of piracy, Samuel Bellamy, the captain who stole ships with precision and chased treasure for a love he'd never returned to. Born in 1689 in Devon, England, Bellamy went to sea young, drifting through naval service before washing up on Cape Cod. There he met Maria Hallett, the woman who changed everything. Her family dismissed him as a nobody, and Bellamy took that personally. Bellamy wasn't chasing glory. He was grinding the ultimate romance side quest to earn enough to come back a man worthy of Maria's hand. He sailed south, joined Hornigold's crew, and soon earned his nickname Black Sam for wearing his long hair loose, a simple look that became his full charisma build. His crew adored him. They elected him captain for his fairness, his courage, and his refusal to mistreat the conquered. And during one capture, when a captured merchant captain complained about the pirates breaking the law, Bellamy responded, "Damn ye are a sneaking puppy, and so are all them who submit to laws rich men made for their own security. Ye rob the poor under cover of law. We plunder the rich under protection of our own courage." For 1 year straight, Bellamy landed critical hit after critical hit, ship after ship falling, all without a wasted strike or excessive bloodshed. His greatest prize was the Widow, a treasure-heavy ship he planned to sail back to Maria. But fate struck first. A violent storm off Cape Cod dragged the Widow under the waves, burying Bellamy just miles from the woman he meant to return to. His playstyle? The charisma captain. High morale, precise tactics, leader-first mentality. Samuel Bellamy lands in Tier 2 because he was brilliant, beloved, and deadly efficient. But destiny cut the story short before he could become a legend on his own terms. Grace O'Malley. At number 7, meet the woman who fought kings, commanded fleets, and stared down an empire. Grace O'Malley, the pirate queen of Ireland. Born in 1530 on Clare Island off Ireland's west coast, Grace grew up in a seafaring clan, basically born with a naval skill tree already unlocked. Her clan ruled the coastline through trade, tribute, and force. When she was told she couldn't sail with her father, she cut her hair short, disguised herself, and earned the nickname Gronewheel, aka Bald Grace. As a teenager, she married Donal O'Flaherty. But when he was killed and rivals tried stealing his lands, Grace stormed his castle with her own men and took it back. That was her origin story moment, the day she stopped following orders and started giving them. She built a small naval empire from Clew Bay, commanding dozens of ships and charging fees for safe passage, a pirate protection mechanic she optimized like a real-world strategy build. But she didn't always win with the threat of cannons, she won with dialogue options. In 1593, Grace sailed to London and walked straight into the court of Queen Elizabeth I. She refused to bow. She spoke to the Queen in Latin. negotiated her son's freedom, and walked out untouched. Her playstyle? The Pirate Queen. Political charisma build, high-level negotiations, naval dominance. Grace O'Malley lands in Tier 2 because she commanded fleets, bent politics to her will, and forced an empire to treat her as an equal. But her power was always limited to her corner of the Irish coast. It never went global. Jean Lafitte. At number 6, meet the Corsair diplomat, Jean Lafitte, the smuggler king who played nations like NPC factions and outmaneuvered every government hunting him. Born around 1780, possibly in France or Saint-Domingue, Lafitte drifted to New Orleans and built an empire in the shadows, a black market network of smugglers, spies, merchants, and guns for hire. He called his base Barataria, a swamp fortress that functioned like a real-world pirate hub zone. Lafitte didn't win with brute force. His weapon was influence. He bribed officials, cut deals with governors, and ran a criminal economy so efficient that even his enemies needed him. When the US tried shutting him down, the British offered Lafitte a fortune to join them. Instead, he chose the ultimate faction switch. He sided with America. His men fought at the Battle of New Orleans, helping Andrew Jackson win a decisive victory. After the war, the government thanked him, and then betrayed him. So Lafitte vanished into the Gulf, rebuilding his smuggler kingdom further south. His playstyle? The diplomat rogue. High persuasion, high stealth, mid-tier combat, S-tier politics. Jean Lafitte lands in Tier 2 because he commanded an empire of criminals, bent governments to his will, and helped shape a war, but relied more on charm and politics than battlefield dominance. Henry Morgan. At number 5, meet the Governor of Greed, Henry Morgan, the land-sea hybrid commander who raided empires and then became the law himself. Born around 1635 in Wales, Morgan rose from obscure beginnings to become one of the most feared buccaneers in the Caribbean. He didn't fight like a sailor, he fought like a general. Morgan mastered amphibious assaults, launching coordinated land and sea attacks that felt like 17th century raid boss encounters. His campaigns against Portobello, Maracaibo, and Panama were brutal, efficient, and perfectly optimized to break enemy morale. He led huge armies of pirates, kept discipline through fear and reward, and executed operations so organized that European powers studied his tactics. And when Spanish officials tried stalling negotiations, Morgan warned them, "Your refusal only guarantees I return with greater force." Morgan's greatest score was the sack of Panama, a massive coordinated strike through jungle terrain that cemented him as a legend and a political problem. Instead of hanging him, though, England pulled the wildest faction flip in pirate history. They knighted Morgan and made him lieutenant governor of Jamaica. The pirate became the establishment. His playstyle? The warlord hybrid. High command stats, calculated aggression, and top-tier raid leadership. Henry Morgan lands in Tier 2 because he was a brutal, brilliant commander with unmatched influence. But his victories depended heavily on land campaigns, political backing, and hybrid warfare, not pure piracy at sea. Before we sail into the final 4 pirates, if this voyage is hitting your loot sensors, go ahead and hit subscribe. We detail history's deadliest characters every week. Don't miss the next raid. Bartholomew Roberts. At number 4, meet the Admiral of the Age, Bartholomew Roberts, the pirate who treated the ocean like a battlefield and ran his fleets with military-grade precision. Born in 1682 in Wales, Bart never meant to be a pirate. He was a skilled navigator, quiet, disciplined, the kind of man other captains relied on. But when his ship was seized and he was forced into piracy, the crew noticed something instantly. Roberts had the mind of a commander. Weeks later, they elected him captain. Roberts wasn't driven by rum, chaos, or greed. He was driven by order. Where other pirates embraced mayhem, Roberts built structure. A full code of conduct, dress codes, strict bans on drinking during operations, and punishments that kept his decks running like a navy. In a lawless world, he created his own rule set. Roberts hated one thing above all: cowardice. And in one battle, when his men shrank from boarding an enemy ship, he felt the whole code he built slipping. He turned, eyes blazing, and shouted, "Damn ye for villains, you dogs! Would you live forever? Roberts ended up capturing over 400 ships, a stat line that makes everyone else look like they were still working with their level 1 equipment. His raids were transatlantic, Brazil, West Africa, the Caribbean, executed with lightning feints, tight formations, and a tactical clarity that felt more admiral than outlaw. But in 1722, the British Navy finally caught him off guard, approaching without battle colors raised. Roberts mistook HMS Swallow for a merchant ship and chased the bait. But what he thought was a low-level loot ship was actually a final boss encounter in disguise. The first British broadside hit Roberts in the throat with grape shot, ending his life with a one-shot kill. And just like that, the man who took 400 ships was gone. But even in death, Roberts commanded obedience. His men wrapped him in sailcloth, as Roberts had instructed with his standing order, should the enemy ever overtake them, and sent him to the deep, beyond any enemy's reach. His playstyle? The tactical admiral. Max discipline, flawless maneuvering, zero wasted motion. Roberts lands at number 4 in Tier 1, because he captured more ships than any other pirate on this list, but he lacked the global impact of the top 3, whose actions changed nations, not just trade routes. Francis Drake. At number 3, meet the Sea Dog of Empire, Francis Drake, the privateer whose ambition, ego, and tactical brilliance helped redraw the map of the world. Born around 1540 in Tavistock, England, Drake grew up on the water, apprenticed on merchant ships, and learned early that Spain was the ultimate enemy, the final boss controlling most of the New World. Drake's raids weren't improvised chaos. They were meticulously planned strike missions, executed with night assaults, flanking maneuvers, and hit-and-run tactics that felt like 16th century speedrunning. But behind the strategy was a man with a furnace for pride. Drake hated Spain with personal intensity. He carried grudges like ammunition, and each raid was part warfare, part vendetta, part attempt to prove he deserved a place among the greats. His defining moment came in 1577, when Queen Elizabeth I sent him on a mission that turned into one of history's greatest feats. He circumnavigated the globe, raiding ports, capturing treasure ships, and returning with enough wealth to make the crown itself look underfunded. Spain called him a pirate, England called him a hero. Drake didn't think of himself as either. He simply loved to play the game, and accepted whatever title came so long as it came along with victory. His tactical high point came in 1588, when Drake helped cripple the Spanish Armada using fire ships, deception, and maneuver warfare that outplayed one of the largest fleets ever assembled. But Drake had been humiliating Spain long before the Armada. In 1587, he launched a lightning strike on Cadiz, burning ships, delaying Spain's invasion plans, and bragging to Queen Elizabeth in a letter. "I have singed the King of Spain's beard." His playstyle? The Royal Raider. Elite tactics, government buffs, insane mobility, and global reach. I rank Francis Drake at number 3, because no other privateer combined ego, strategy, and geopolitical impact so explosively. A man whose ambition helped change the balance of empires. Blackbeard. At number 2, meet the master of fear itself, Blackbeard, aka Edward Teach, the pirate who understood that terror is a resource, and engineered himself into the walking, talking embodiment of intimidation. Born around 1680 in Bristol, England, Edward Teach didn't begin as a monster. Rather, he constructed one with painstaking detail in the character customization menu. Every detail of the persona, the lit fuses in his beard, the dark silhouette, the measured predatory walk, was designed with the precision of a man building a weapon out of his own persona. And beneath the theatrics, Teach was calm, controlled, a tactician who preferred scare tactics over bloodshed. His genius wasn't cruelty, it was emotional engineering. He knew how to seize the psychological high ground before a single shot was fired. One early account, less reliable but famous, claims Teach once warned his own men, "If I don't kill one of you now and then, you'll forget who I am." But the most interesting part about that quote is that all historical records suggest that there is no evidence Blackbeard ever killed one of his own men, because he never needed to. The scary stories he crafted about himself did the work for him. Blackbeard commanded the Queen Anne's Revenge, a 40-gun monster he used to blockade Charleston in a stunt so bold it felt like a real-world aggro trap. He took hostages, negotiated with chilling patience, and walked away with medicine, supplies, and a legend so powerful that ships surrendered the moment they recognized his silhouette. Despite the myth, Teach rarely killed. His real superpower was crew cohesion, 0 mutinies, tight discipline, and a crew that feared disappointing him more than they feared any enemy. But in 1718, Lieutenant Robert Maynard sprung an ambush. As he was surrounded, witnesses swear Teach roared his last words.
Damnation seize my soul if I give you quarters, or take any from you.
Blackbeard fought like a raid boss in his final phase, and was shot 5 times, stabbed more than 20, before finally going down. His playstyle? The Devil of the Deep. Max aura control, psychological warfare build, flawless presence. I rank Blackbeard at number 2, because no pirate mastered fear, crew control, and battlefield theater like he did, a man whose shadow did most of the fighting for him. Ching Shih. At number 1, meet the pirate empress, Ching Shih. Wait, a girl for number 1 pirate? I get it, your pirate brain just threw an error message, mine did too, okay? But stay with me, because I think when you see the 1,000 plus ship armada she commanded, the kill zone tactic she mastered, and all 3 empires she outmaneuvered like they were low-level AI, you'll come to the same exact conclusion I did. Ching Shih, also known formally as Zheng Yi Sao, the only captain on this list who didn't just survive piracy, she mastered it like an empire-level strategy campaign. Born around 1775 in Guangdong, China, Ching Shih began life far from command, working aboard a floating brothel in Canton. But even then, people noticed her presence. Sharp, calm, calculating. A woman who could read a room in seconds and bend the advantage toward herself. When she met the pirate commander Zheng Yi, their partnership, personal and political, turned her into a rising force within the Red Flag Fleet. But her true ascent began in 1807, when Zheng Yi died and every captain expected the Federation to collapse. Instead, Ching Shih executed a flawless leadership takeover, combining diplomacy, intimidation, and pure authority to expand what Zheng Yi began into the largest pirate fleet ever assembled. Over 1,000 ships and as many as 70,000 pirates by some accounts. She ruled with terrifying clarity. Her naval code punished theft, rewarded discipline, and transformed the world's largest pirate armada into a corporate-level war machine. On the water, she ran battles like naval puzzles she'd already solved. Her fleets boxed enemies into kill zones, cut off escape lanes, and overwhelmed them with synchronized volleys and perfect timing. Commanders who underestimated her never made that mistake twice. China, Portugal, and Britain all tried to crush her. All of them failed, because Ching Shih wasn't driven by chaos. She was driven by control. Every alliance, every maneuver, every rule was a calculated move to stabilize a floating empire. And when the world finally bent, she made the ultimate in-game play. She negotiated full amnesty, kept her fortune, retired peacefully, and died undefeated. Her playstyle? The Pirate Empress, maxed leadership, empire management, 0 loss campaign. I ranked Ching Shih number 1, because no one else comes even close to commanding as big as a fleet as she did. She played piracy like a grand strategy game, won without ever losing a battle, somehow kept 70,000 cutthroats in line like she'd maxed out the leadership skill tree, all while being a woman, of course, in a sea of hardened, rough and tumble men, and somehow went on to retire in comfort, something almost unheard of in the pirate world. Hard to top that, even for the fiercest captains on this list. But hold up, because we've got some bonus booty. I've got one last pirate for you, the one and only gentleman pirate himself, Stede Bonnet. This guy ranked so low on my successful pirate metrics, I almost didn't even read his full story. But then I realized, this dude is pure pirate-themed comedy gold. Stede Bonnet was born into money in Barbados. Bonnet had the vibe of a wealthy suburban dad, the confidence of a houseplant, and the demeanor of someone who says, "Pardon me," when sneezing alone. A man much more familiar with afternoon tea than cannon recoil. Then one morning, he basically just woke up and said, "You know what? I'm bored. Let's abandon my wife, my children, and become a pirate." That was Stede Bonnet, a man who basically walked into Party City, saw a pirate costume, and said, "Ah,
This is my new personality.
No trauma, no vendetta, no grand rebellion, just a premium tier midlife crisis DLC. Well, Stede Bonnet eventually bought a ship, because he didn't know how to steal one, hired a crew despite not knowing anything about sailing, and immediately started losing money because he was paying a nice little salary to a crew who had no respect for him. And his piracy? A masterclass in unintentional slapstick. He attacked ships he couldn't catch, picked fights he couldn't win, and once pointed his men into battle from his bed, because, and I quote, he was too depressed to stand. His crew eventually ditched him and handed him over to Blackbeard, who took control of Bonnet's ship like an annoyed babysitter taking scissors from a toddler. Stede was so incompetent that Blackbeard, the master of fear himself, used him as comic relief. It was like pairing a raid boss with a whiny, spineless NPC. At one point, while Bonnet was ashore recovering from likely petty injuries, Blackbeard just sailed off with his ship and his crew. It was the pirate equivalent of leaving your friend at the gas station. The seas were dangerous, but traveling with Bonnet was apparently worse. Eventually, Bonnet tried going solo again. It went about how you'd expect. He got captured, tried to disguise himself as a woman to escape, he failed, and was hanged in 1718, reportedly apologizing to everyone for the inconvenience. His playstyle? The gentleman pirate. Zero management, self-destructive tactics, and comedic value set to max. Stede Bonnet doesn't land in any tier. He lands in a separate category entirely, the meme tier. A pirate so catastrophically bad, we had to include him anyway. And that's the lineup. 12 pirates, 12 builds, and one hilariously lame wannabe. So now it's your move. Who deserves a bigger share of the loot? Who should be tossed overboard? And who'd you sail with as your main? Drop your take below, hit subscribe, and choose your next character.